All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is PJ Stevens. I'm a marketing manager here at SmartBear, and I'm excited to welcome you all to this joint webinar between SmartBear and QASource. Today, we'll be discussing the topic of how to get the best test automation ROI through continuous testing with SoapUI Pro and TestComplete. So before we get started, I just want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items that frequently are asked during the session. First of all, yes, the session is being recorded and you will receive a copy of that via email later this week to the email address that you signed up for. Additionally, we'll be running a couple of poll questions throughout the webinar, so your participation in those is very much appreciated. And finally, towards the end of the session, we'll save some time for Q&A. I'm very pleased to be joined on the SmartBear side by a few of our engineers from SoapUI Pro and TestComplete. That's Russ and Bruno. They'll do their best to answer any product-specific questions directly via the Q&A box on your screen. Additionally, our main presenter, who I'll introduce here in just a second, we'll take some time to answer some questions live at the end as well. So definitely submit those through the Q&A box. So without further ado, let me introduce you to today's presenter. Anand Ramakrishnan, who is joining us from QASource, where he is the QA director. He directs a team of over 200 engineers and has a background that includes over 20 years of automation experience. How are you today, Anand?
All right. Thanks, PJ. Thanks for the kind words. And thank you, everyone, for joining and attending this webinar and giving us this opportunity to share this information with all of you. We are very thrilled to present this topic to you today. You're all probably here because you believe the same thing that we all do, which is that the test automation ROI is the core component of your test strategy. It is great to see such a huge turnout today. It is higher than normal, which tells us how important this topic is to all of you. So before we get into it, let me briefly introduce myself and QASource. I've been associated with QASource for over 15 years, and I've been successfully directing teams of over 200 plus engineers on a variety of different domains like healthcare, financial, legal matter management, CRM, CMS, and cloud content management domains. And to let all of you know, like over 70% of our engineers do nothing but automation. I've spent over a decade implementing a variety of QA processes, automation frameworks, and functional tools. I'm also closely involved in managing evaluation and implementation of various tools and technologies at QASource, namely Selenium, UFT, TestComplete, and SoapUI Pro. Finally, one of the most important facets of my role at QASource is to closely work with our clients and perform project QA analysis and suggest approaches to help them evolve their processes, team structures, plannings, and resolution of issues. Now, I would like to take this opportunity and give you all an introduction about who we are and what we do at QASource. So QASource, as a company, we were founded in 2002. QASource has grown from a small team of 3 engineers to an international organization of over 900 plus professionals. We are a comprehensive QA services provider and have been focused in API and UI automation testing for over a decade. We are a tool agnostic company, and one of the major roles we play is in recommending our clients with the best suited automation tools that work for their product and technology stack. Our clients range from VC-funded startups to Fortune 500 companies. We have offices in US, India, Mexico, to serve our globally located customers in various time zones. We have state-of-the-art labs at our facilities with over 400 plus desktop configurations and over 150 plus mobile device configurations. QASource customers have successful exits exceeding $11 billion in mergers and acquisitions, leading to our slogan, quality that creates value. We've grown over 20 to 50% annually, and we are a market leader in test automation services, and we've delivered hundreds of successful engagements. So moving on, now let's take a look at our today's agenda for this webinar. So today we will be sharing our experience with SmartBear tools, TestComplete, and SoapUI Pro, and how it has helped us attain maximum ROI. We'll be covering a lot of information in the next 40 minutes, and we'll be making a lot of recommendations. We'll be covering the product domains where these tools have been beneficial to us. What were our challenges prior to using these tools? What made us choose these tools, and how did they fit into our requirements? We will be showcasing a case study from one of our clients to demonstrate how our life changed using these tools. We will talk what are some of the best practices that we followed while using these tools. What are the value-added features that we can get with these tools? And last but not the least, we will also recommend who all should consider using these tools. So before moving on, let's do a quick poll to see what interests bring our audience here today. So you must be seeing the poll in your screens now. So we will be giving you all another 10 seconds. And while all of you are taking part in the polls, we expect each slide of this webinar to be beneficial to anyone working on automation and with these tools. But these polls would definitely help us understand the taste and requirements of our audience. All right. So we see the results now, and I'm going to share the results with the audience. And if you see, like, we have fair distribution of our audience expecting to hear about each particular slide of our agenda. So I hope all of our slides are going to be useful to us. So now let's start with our agenda. Let us take a look at the industries or product domains where these tools have helped us so far. There are multiple industries where we are dealing with both UI and API testing requirements. And some of the key domains where these tools have helped us are the financial domain, where we've automated one of the complex and data-intensive applications. The healthcare domain, where we've automated end-to-end workflows to validate health life cycle of patients and their overall progress in the system. We've automated telecommunication domain systems. We've also used these tools with many other major domains like cybersecurity, cloud collaboration, and legal matter management as well, where we've automated and customized workflows and approval flows to handle legal disputes and lawsuits. And needless to mention, many more domains like this. Now let's take a look into the challenges that we faced, and before evaluating, let's take a look at the challenges that we faced before evaluating and adapting these automation tools in our next slide. what were those challenges that the functional teams faced before using these tools? So prior to TestComplete, manual regressions were time-consuming because complex domains meant that we have thousands of test cases to ensure complete coverage, which in turn meant larger manual effort and lengthy release cycles. Most automation tools that were available at that time required expert-level programming skills, which required higher learning curve and thus lessened their adaptability as well. Tools could support very few or specific programming languages that did not match with the application technology stack. So scripting languages were also a barrier. There were no solutions for multi-platform support. Where there were situations like automation of desktop, web, and mobile application all together in an end-to-end scenario. There was lack of tool documentation or support was not available to engineers to learn the tool from scratch. And there were tools with record and play feature, but from reliability standpoint, many of these tools failed in running the recorded scenarios on re-executions. So moving on, let us also take at some of the challenges we faced before adapting to SoapUI Pro. One of the major challenges were that the defects were caught later in the stages. And this is because of the lack of automated API tests. The defects were caught during UI testing phase, which increased the time and cost of identifying the root cause, and also the cost of fixing these issues. Populating reports data set were time consuming, and that was another major challenge. Then there was lack of intuitive tools, and even the ones that existed required extensive programming skills and in-depth knowledge of API implementations. The next challenge was there were no options to detect schema-related issues as well. Then evaluating build health early was also a challenge because it was very time consuming doing these build health analysis manually. And lastly, like uploading test data manually for bulk test requirements like group tests or load tests was a tedious effort. Considering all of the above challenges, we evaluated multiple tools available for automation and zeroed in on TestComplete and SoapUI Pro. Let's now discuss what made us select these tools. So starting with TestComplete, some of the key features that it provided was that one of the most important ones was that it was easy to use. It's a fairly simple tool that anyone can use, and even those who do not know how to code. It provided scriptless record and play feature, which allows tests to be created visually, and all recorded actions get converted into a test. It was reliable, fast, and time-saving. It has built-in test reporting analysis, which provides enhanced reporting, which is significantly easy to analyze and debug. The reports also provide the ability to triage cross-browser executions by filtering errors. It also provides the feature of automated test reusability, where tests can be very easily made reusable by simply calling the reference of a test inside another test workflow. It also provides a feature of object recognition using AI, which allows users to detect and test application components that were previously undetectable, including PDFs, charts, mainframes, and SAP applications, which is invaluable to modern day applications, because earlier these things were not at all automatable. And it also provides a feature to help us integrate it with other tools like Jenkins, Git, Zephyr, so we can make TestComplete part of our continuous integration process. So moving on, let's also see like what are some of the key features that SoapUI Pro provides. Starting with the drag drop feature, this enables test steps in a certain test suite to be cloned very easily, creating and running even the most complex test scenarios is as simple as can be done very easily using drag and drop actions. It provides multi-environment support, which means once a project is created, it could be executed on a variety of different stacks. Let's say you created a test on the QA environment, you could run it on staging, or you can run it on UAT just by making configuration changes. You don't have to rewrite your test. It's reliable, again, fast and time-saving. It provides built-in test reporting and analysis, wherein you can customize the reports based on your requirements at the project level, test suite level, and even at the test case level. It helps you to handle complex scenarios, and all these complex scenarios can be automated. One of the examples I could give is that you can easily use the response of one of the APIs as a request parameter into another API to build complex end-to-end scenarios. It provides the feature to generate coverage report of your automated tests, so you can always know what is automated and what is left to be automated in your APIs. And finally, as TestComplete, it also provides integration with other tools like Jenkins, Git, and more. So these capabilities helped us overcome the manual challenges we were successfully able to develop framework solutions for different applications for a variety of different clients. To understand how exactly we got these benefits using SmartBear products, let me share a case study. I would actually say one of our success stories in our next slide. So in this case study, we will be talking about the requirements, the solutions we provided, and the results that we were able to deliver for our clients. This client is one of our leading financial domain institutions. So before we talk about the case study, I will quickly talk about and introduce this client. So these clients, as I said, they were a leading financial domain institution. They operated across geographical markets worldwide. They were associated with more than 50 global banks, had the ability to do transactions up to 50 million in national currencies. They provided support to their users in both mobile and desktop platforms. And they had the ability to transact amounts more than 40,000. So looking at these clients, they came up with the business requirements of having us to provide a stable, flexible, and secure environment, provide automation visibility or ease of use to their engineering team, wherein they meant that the tests could be usable both by their functional engineers as well as developers who could execute these automated tests. A shorter learning curve for them to use these tools. The tools that we would recommend should provide them with reliable features for validating complex transactions, as it was their highest priority to maintain the data accuracy. one of their requirements was to reduce the manual efforts by 70% and automate complex test cases to uncover issues early in their test cycle. So once these requirements came in, we evaluated various tools and narrowed down into TestComplete and SoapUI Pro as they met most of our evaluation criteria. We developed a data-driven framework for them to support their data-intensive application, and further integrated CI support in the framework to help improve their time to market. And in the end, we also automated their end-to-end scenarios for maximum test coverage. With these solutions, we were able to save a lot of manual effort and time. So let's have a look at a graphical representation to understand the real-time ROI that we were able to generate for our clients. There were a total of 1,400 API test cases to be automated, and the manual effort took us about 24 days, as you can see in the graph. And with automation, we were able to reduce it to over 99%, it's about a quarter of a day, we were able to deliver the results of these 1,400 API tests. And on the functional side, there were over 5,500 test cases where the execution took us about 92 days of effort, which was brought down by 85% after we performed the UI automation. So looking at the overall results, we were able to reduce the execution time by over 87%, which clearly shows the efforts and time saved were huge. It decreased our overall regression cycle time and enabled faster time to market with reliable quality. It was all possible because of the right choice of tools and also because of the best practices we followed while using these tools. So now let us take a look at these best practices in our upcoming slide. So let's go through some of the best practices. And these best practices that we are going to share are a compilation of our successful engagements across a variety of different domains with these tools. So we would like to share these best practices so that it helps the audience improve their automated testing processes. So moving on, the first best practice that followed in TestComplete was a modular framework approach. In a modular framework approach, we break down the framework structure into utilities, into reusable actions, page objects, configurations, and tests and test suites. The benefit is to create an abstraction layer so that any changes made in individual sections would not affect the overarching module, which means that if any change is made to the application, only the respective page objects need to be fixed, meaning you don't have to tinker with the rest of the framework and the maintenance required is very, very efficient. The next best practice that we followed is the use of structured test data, which ensures that we are using meaningful format of test data following a certain naming convention to make sure that every record in the system is uniquely identified from each other and does not refer to any real-time data. Each field on the record is tied to a unique key so that we can easily isolate a cross-silo condition in the system in case of analyzing failures. So moving on, next best practice that we wanted to share was disabling unwanted features, where we can enhance the performance by disabling few of the inbuilt features to get the best out of these tools. So as the slide shows, like you can disable MSAA objects if you're not using them in your automation. Or another example could be disabling the test visualizer in order to increase the speed of your tests and save the hard disk space as well. Then we also use the best practice of keyword testing, where each function of the application under test is laid out as a keyword in a table. This helped even non-coders and business users to write tests using keywords. So as you see in the screen, like just by using the launch browser, anyone could write a test to launch a browser to automate their tests. So by building keywords like these, automation became fairly simple for business users and non-coders. And finally, you could also use some of the built-in features provided by these tools. One of which we've highlighted is using the checkpoint feature, which helps you to validate different types of test data, objects, images, data tables, etc. You can also use some more features like name mapping feature to map objects for future references for writing your tests, using the object browser feature for identifying page objects. You can also use specific optimized weights instead of using hard-coded weights like weight property, weight window, weight child, and so on. So now let's see a few of the best practices that we followed for SoapUI Pro as well. So in SoapUI Pro, one of the best practices we followed was using realistic data. And using realistic data is important because certain input values may be dependent on other information, and the same conditions may have to be verified in the API responses as well. And using realistic data helps in accurately representing these relationships in your test data. The next best practice was using dynamic assertions, as they are not hard-coded, they're flexible, and they reduce the chances of failure while increasing the robustness and reducing the maintenance overhead of your scripts. We also followed the best practice of testing both positive and negative scenarios, where you all know that when testing positive scenarios ensures that application behaves in the intended way for validating inputs, and testing scenarios in the testing negative scenarios would ensure that the application handles exceptions graciously with proper error messages. So both were equally important while you're writing your test scenarios. So that is an important best practice to follow. Then we followed structured test-based requirements to provide modularity, readability, and helping in easy identification of issues in any feature. Further, we also followed the best practice of reusing test data from functional tests for performance testing. Reuse of data-driven functional tests helped us in giving a healthy dose of reality to performance and security evaluation processes. So those were kind of the best practices that we followed. Obviously, there are many more, but these are some of the important ones that we wanted to share with you all. And now that we have discussed all the best practices that we can follow to make our automations better, let us now have a look at some of the value-added features provided by these tools. So starting with TestComplete, TestComplete provides a cool feature of BDD integration where you can write or create tests in simple English-like languages. It provides distributed testing support where you can run tests within a network on different computers or in a series or simultaneously. It provides Zephyr for Jira integration, and with this feature, you can update your test results or execution results back to your test case management system, and make sure that your test case management system becomes the single source of truth for both manual and automated executions. TestComplete also provides OCR with Google Vision API, and this is a cool feature as it helps in recognizing text embedded inside an image, and thereby it increases the automation scope to a wider array of scenarios which were earlier not possible. So a really cool feature that TestComplete provides. Further, it also provides integration with cross-browser-testing.com. So with this, TestComplete integrates with cross-browser testing cloud solutions and enables you to run automated web tests in various OS browser combinations, minimizing your infrastructure and setup costs. And finally, it also provides scaling Selenium WebDriver tests, where you can include your Selenium WebDriver test inside your TestComplete projects and run them as part of your audit tests. You can also enhance your Selenium tests with various TestComplete capabilities, such as adding a desktop verification scenario to an end-to-end test. So that becomes an added advantage of scaling your Selenium tests with TestComplete. Now, let us also take a look at the key features of SoapUI Pro. So one of the key features is service simulation, which helps in creating web service prototypes to generate a complete mock service using just a single request. As a result, the test implementations have become faster for the testing team because they need not wait for the developers to deploy the service. Instead, they can continue creating tests or randomize the responses to test every aspect of our future services. It also provides data-driven test support, where with this feature, we can use test data iteratively to validate a single request with a variety of different positive and negative data sets. It also provides a feature of security test generator, which helps in validating functional security of your target services, allowing you to assess the vulnerability of your system for common security attacks. It also provides GraphQL API support, which is one of the latest API trends in the technology domain, and many of the modern day enterprises are moving towards adopting this over REST and SOAP protocols. So this becomes a key feature for testing GraphQL APIs. It also provides test result history, transaction logging, and comparison. This feature helps to show the past executions of a given test, and also helps to compare the differences between the previous and current test runs, and dramatically simplifies the failure diagnosis process. And finally, it also provides command line execution support, with which you can run your test on command line on various platforms, and also integrate it with CI processes of your product. So considering all these features we've discussed so far, all of you might have this question that who should adopt these tools? So let's find out the same in our next slide. So these tools will be handy for teams that are dealing with secure and complex domains, teams that have huge backlog of regression tests, teams that are having data-intensive applications and repetitive testing requirements, teams with cross-browser testing requirement and cross-platform testing requirement. One of the key would be like teams which have a lot of switching between web, desktop, and mobile platforms, while executing an end-to-end scenario. Teams using Silverlight, Infragistic Logics, Flash, and Flex controls. Teams using SOAP, REST, and GraphQL APIs in their products. And teams that require migration of legacy code or tools from previous versions of TestComplete to the latest versions. These are some of our top recommendations, but definitely there are many more challenges that these tools help you resolve. Now, before we do a recap, I would request you all to respond to our next poll that you will be seeing in your screen right now. So we'll be giving you a few seconds as people have started polling and the responses are coming in. All right, so we have we'll give another 5 seconds. So moving on, so now that we have the responses, let's move ahead and look at our recap. So to recap, so far we discussed the product domains where these tools have been beneficial to us. What were our challenges prior to using these tools? What made us choose these tools and how did they fit into our requirements? A case study from one of our clients demonstrating how life changed for us after using these tools. What are some of the best practices that we followed while using these tools? Some of the value-added features that make these tools stand out. And lastly, who all should consider using these tools. We hope that we were able to add value to your automation endeavors through this webinar. So before we leave, we again would want to briefly talk about QASource and our automation expertise for those who might have joined late and would have missed the introduction slides. So QASource, as a company, we were founded in the year 2002. We are a comprehensive QA services provider, and we're focused in API and UI automation for over a decade. We've been testing applications, including mobile, web, desktop platforms for over 15 plus years now. We've worked with many different clients and built out many different automation frameworks. We've built different UI and API automation frameworks using these tools that you see in the slide based on data-driven framework model, hybrid framework model, and object-oriented framework models as well. We've used a variety of different tools such as Protractor, Ranorex, Catalan Studio, Ready API, Postman, Selenium WebDriver, Appium, and many other tools. Of course, to name a few, like we've used a variety of different languages such as Java, C#, Python, Ruby, PHP, and Perl for coding these tests, and used a host of other technologies to ensure that your automation gets used in continuous integration, using tools like Jenkins, Maven, Gradle, TestNG, Git, Pipeline, etc. Over the last 10 plus years and 30 plus frameworks later, we've learned that the best ways to build maintainable and robust and portable automation suites. So as a takeaway, we want to leave you all with information on some of the recent webinars that we've delivered in the past and that might be useful for your future endeavors. So these are the titles of the other webinars that we have conducted. And if you go to the URL at the bottom of your screen, which says www.qasource.com/webinars, you can view each of these and get more detailed information about some of the topics that we covered today. So this brings us to the end of the webinar, and we'll utilize the remaining time in taking up the questions that have been flowing through the course of the webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Anand, for that.
Thanks.
You start to answer and maybe peruse through some of the Q&A. I'm just going to launch a third poll question here for our audience. So this question is, if you'd like to learn more about the following tools or services that we discussed today, you can feel free to select one or two or three, as many as you like. And we appreciate Anand, of course, running us through the presentation. Anand, do you see some of the Q&A on your side that you want to maybe take a little time to answer?
Yeah.
Great.
I'm just taking a look at it. There have been many interesting questions flowing through. All right. So as I'm taking a look, this is an interesting question. Let me read it out. It says, like, I'm a QA manager leading a testing group of a product development company, and I have a team of manual engineers but want to start API automation. Is SoapUI Pro the right tool to kickstart the API automation, and what will the learning curve look like? Great question. To answer your question, the tool you want to use for your API automation should, I mean, when you're considering API automation tools, you should consider that your tool supports the API protocols used in your product. The best part about SoapUI Pro is that it supports all the common protocols of APIs, as we shared in the webinar. Like, it supports SOAP, it supports REST, and GraphQL as well, which means you have one of the best coverage of protocols with SoapUI Pro tool. On top of this, it also lets you incorporate some of the advanced features with intuitive and simple steps and without any complex scripting. So talking about I'll quickly talk about some of the key features, like it helps you write code-free tests. You get the ability to create and run the most complex test scenarios with a few clicks using drag and drop actions. It provides you built-in assertion support for verifications. It provides you the ability to use the response of one API and feed it as a request parameter into another API to help automate complex scenarios. And on top of all these features and many more, it also provides a great documentation and 24/7 help desk support for resolving user queries. All these features typically would enable a team, if I think loud, like you could start writing basic automated tests from day one. However, your velocity might vary based on the product, its complexities, the type of framework you're building, the development of the kind of features that you're developing, and the configurations that you're building. So the learning curve will be fairly shorter in case if you decide to go ahead with using SoapUI Pro in comparison to other tools. So, all right, hope I answered this question for you. So looking at the next question, this is another great question, and this gentleman wants to know, how long does it take for QASource to ramp up client initiatives with tools and services? I mean, we can do it fairly quickly. I mean, when you come to QASource for QA services, our sales and leadership team works very closely with your team to understand your QA scope and product requirements. Our team would evaluate the best suited tools for your product and technology stack and determine the skills required to deliver the best results for your product. Once the requirements are nailed down by the leadership team, they can fairly quickly ramp up this initiative because they can pick from a rich captive pool of over 900+ engineers working on various domains, tools, and technologies. Once the team is identified, these dedicated pool of engineers work as an extension of your client's QA teams to deliver on their products. We've delivered hundreds of successful engagements for our clients, and in many cases, we've started for our clients with a small QA team and later on went on to take the complete ownership of their QA efforts over the years. You can also, if you still have further queries, you can always reach us at sales@QASource.com through our website, and more about our capabilities, expertise, client success stories, and references as well. All right, so I think I have, PJ, do we have time to go one more question?
Yeah, I think we can do one more here.
All right, so let me take one last question, another interesting one where the question is, how do I implement a single framework to accommodate both UI and API tests, and what all kind of frameworks can be managed within TestComplete? To answer your question, I would say certainly we can implement a single automation framework using TestComplete, as it gives us built-in capability where we can add and execute our API tests as well. It can be simply done by exporting or importing the .xml file created using your SoapUI Pro or Ready API, and then calling those XML files directly into your TestComplete UI scripts. To answer your second part of the question, which was like what kind of frameworks we can develop, we can really create and manage different types of testing frameworks with TestComplete. We've seen TestComplete to be framework agnostic, as we are tool agnostic. You can create a modular framework, as we discussed in the best practices slide, where the objective is to enhance code reusability and reduce maintenance. You can create a data-driven framework where we can separate the test data from script logic to store data externally from the test, and the same function or the test could be used to run multiple times with different sets of test data using Excel spreadsheets, text files, CSVs, SQL tables, and databases. You can also build a keyword-driven framework where even non-coders and business users can write tests using keywords. And hybrid testing framework, which could be a combination of all the frameworks that I recently mentioned, which could leverage the advantages and mitigate some of the weaknesses of the previous frameworks. So those were the questions that I think we would be able to take at this point. And these were some great questions. We want to be respectful for everybody's time, so we are going to end the Q&A. But if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact us. Again, I want to thank you all once again for giving me this opportunity to present. Please do send us your feedback so we can make these webinars better in future. I really wish you all the very best in your automation testing endeavors in future. So with great pleasure, I'm handing it back to PJ to wrap this up. Thanks, PJ.
Absolutely.
Take it from here.
And thank you, Anand, so much for such a comprehensive presentation. We hope everyone out there found some value, and we appreciate everyone on the line for taking some time out of their day to listen in. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to us, sales@QASource.com or sales@smartbear.com. We'll be sending the recording of this webinar out via email shortly after, and you'll also be able to find it on each of our websites. So thanks again to everyone for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.